Hi, my name's Frank Liu, and I'm the CEO of Novapeutics. Briefly, that Novapeutics is working on curative therapeutics for diabetes type 2, mainly to regenerate beta cells in pancreas. And because most diabetics have reduced function in beta cells or numbers, so by regenerating them, it's considered a curative therapy. I'd like to thank the organizers, Sherry and her team, and Procurement Direct for inviting me to give you a talk on the topic of hyper-immutable data, blockchain applications in clinical trials. And on this title slide, as everybody is confined due to coronavirus, I myself is no exception, and I spend a lot of time working in this picture, which is my backyard. And yes, the Wi-Fi does reach to this little gazebo, and it's a nice change of scenery, and I hope that everybody's doing well during this unusual time. And I believe that this talk is right after lunch, so I hope that you guys all made it back and tune in to this talk. So now I'm gonna turn to the first slide. So briefly about the overall pharma landscape is that we are looking in a rapidly shrinking numbers of big pharma in the past, say 20 years. There are many large deals over the past 20 years that's shrinking 60 pharma to less than just 10 today. And just last year, we talking about Bristol Myers Squibb deal with Celgene, Allergan buying Actavis, and Takeda with Shire, so you're talking about big pharmas are coming together, and essentially the goal is to save costs hopefully by increasing efficiencies in the drug developmental process. So outsourcing research and development activities have been up as a result of mergers, acquisition, and investments in early biotechnologies. It's all designed to keep core competencies within companies to manage the contract workforce, while reducing internal development efforts to save costs and increase efficiency. Drug research and development costs and process currently, a snapshot of that would be discovery and development of safe and effective drugs is a challenging undertaking that can take 10 to 15 years and cost $1 to $1.5 billion. And the drug developmental process requires sophisticated technology and a broad array of medical and laboratory expertise, which include disease target identification, preclinical evaluation, toxicology and safety testing, clinical trial design and implementation. And roughly for every 5,000 to 10,000 potential compounds that are evaluated, ultimately only one receives approval from the FDA. And current trial process has high friction existed among clinical trial stakeholders. Stakeholders' cooperation in clinical trials entail multiple challenges, such as rising costs and lack of a secure, systematic approach for data management. So the good news about all this mergers, acquisition, and reduction of big pharma is that It's increased numbers of contract research organizations, and by having this surge itself enhances the democratization of drug innovations. But the cost really hasn't been reduced as I think that everyone anticipated with the advent of technologies and the business processes and the drug development processes. And actually it has been going up. So one of the aspects of the idea is to increase efficiencies by having a good data infrastructure. And essentially the idea is that the trust value within the data, integrity within data has to be high. And if you can build from the start that high, then the friction will be much less. So basically the effective tools as such, just mentioned, are needed to enhance efficient stakeholders collaboration by sharing data that have trust building. So you can see that the chart, the graph on the right, is that the y-axis symbolizes the trust value. Meanwhile, the x-axis is the due diligence required. It takes time, money, and effort, and as more due diligence it's involved, you have increased trust value. And if we can't have information from the ground up that's already up high in trust value, then naturally we're talking about a large reduction of the saving the cost, time, and money. So the big picture is really about democratizing data. So you have a centralized internet data storage kind of architecture currently existing, such as YouTube, Amazon, Google, etc. And then you have the decentralized type of data setting, such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, ICOs, which stands for Initial Coin Offering, which most of the time these ICOs are built on smart contracts that piggyback of Ethereum platform. But there are other platforms also provide smart contracts, which then allows ICO to be formed. Those deserve many hours of conversation or a discussion or talk. So I would just kind of mention it here. So the initial purpose of the internet was to store and retrieve information through a centralized server and interface. The current technology and protocol designed to store and track this type of data haven't evolved much since the early days of the internet. Cloud has been the buzz tech for the past decade. Next, blockchain as the potential democratize data by dramatically enhance how we interact by intrinsically building trust that is immutable and data storage performed in real time. And it's a robust sharing database structure. So essentially, blockchain is really a hyperledger spreadsheet that is stored in decentralized clouds. And I will explain a little more below, is that transactional records are created and are validated globally by decentralized participating computers in the network called miners. And the disputed nature of the ledger makes it impossible to make simultaneous changes to all copies of the ledger, and it's a further safeguard against both internal and external attacks. Therefore, validated transactions are permanently and immutably stored. The owner of the transaction has the power to move anything of value freely and instantaneously without borders of intermediaries. And examples of blockchain applications have been widely used today in financial transactions, medical records, land titles, crowdfunding, healthcare, supply chain, and etc. Blockchain components. The distributed ledger, which stores data and housed on the system of all trusted parties in the network. Public/private key cryptography. The key controls information access that has been encrypted onto the blockchain, providing access to data while simultaneously validating their identity. Consensus. This is the mechanism by the participating parties in the blockchain network to validate that data being placed on the blockchain is from a trusted source. Participants using a cryptographic proof. For example, proof of work or proof of stake. Then you have the smart contract. These are executable pieces of code that perform a function, such as issuing payment or transferring documents, when the conditions of transactions are met. Now, current clinical trial supply chain. 3 key components is to tracing products in the shipping package, 2, verifying the correct data is collected, 3 is validating that the study site remains blinded. So these core qualities that blockchain can be helpful in the trials is that under the concept of traceability, the chain between the clinical study sponsor, study patients, and site is long and involved the use of multiple IT systems. In a world where all parties involved are linked by a blockchain, it would be possible to leverage encryption and access control so that the trusted participants could get confirmation of the receipt of the product without having access to protected patient information, and in turn provides the ability to validate patient identity. 2, verify completion. By introducing smart contracts, the entire clinical trial process can benefit from using blockchain technology. The process trial milestones can serve as stage gates for the smart contract. The process will only proceed beyond that point when required actions are completed and correct. 3, validation. Before the initiation of a clinical trial, sponsors submit the parameters of the study to the appropriate regulatory authorities and various ethics committees at the trial sites. Then, at the study's conclusion, the sponsor's regulatory affairs department determines if all requirements have been fulfilled before accepting and then forwarding the results to the appropriate regulatory authorities for approval. And then, the challenge that faces sponsors and regulators is how to ensure the validity of the data and to establish universal standards for that process. The implementation of blockchain technology can ensure such standards are implemented, since the validation of every transaction is an integral part of the technology. Now let's look at the current state of data storage and flow in clinical trials. The regulatory audits and validation of the study findings and results is a slow, expensive, and labor-intensive activity. The introduction of the blockchain could overcome this inefficiency, as organizations can quickly demonstrate data validity due to the immutability of the records collected and the fact the authorities' specifications were incorporated and executed by the smart contracts existing in blockchain implemented as part of that solution. Regulatory considerations could be satisfied once traceability, verified completion, and validation are met with high confidence using blockchain. how blockchain could add value at the following trial steps. These are the examples, such as going from the active pharmaceutical ingredients, API, sourcing, to packaging, to storage and shipping, and to patient. API sourcing is an essential element of a clinical study, ensuring that there is sufficient supply of the API for the trial. Therefore, multiple plants may be used because the drug is at an early stage of the development life cycle. The productivity of plants is less predictable, and the risk of having insufficient supply could be mitigated by making available real-time inventory to the study stakeholders, both up and downstream. This can be accomplished by having the information recorded and updated on a clinical study blockchain. Packaging. With the investigational drug product and comparator supply source secure, the next stage in the clinical supply chain is packaging. The creation of smart packaging, which is merging the physical and digital worlds, can generate new data for the sponsor to use. Not only can an organization encode the identity of the product, allowing for traceability, but additional sensors can collect data from the moment the treatment is placed inside the package. All of this information can then be recorded to the blockchain to create a complete record of a medication journey throughout the clinical study. Storage and shipping. Authenticate the ownership and property of the drugs in a fast-moving environment with ease. When we enable smart packaging for drugs in shipment and storage, a more interesting picture emerges, where all products down to the individual level can be located with their conditions assessed. This also increases the assurance of authenticity during the trial. In later larger scale production, similar serialization and tracking techniques across a trusted blockchain empowered network can prevent counterfeit and or defect products from entering the supply chain to the patient. The ultimate purpose of a clinical trial is to track patients' responses to the investigational drug. At the end of the clinical supply chain, the data is provided to the sponsor for further analytics and analysis. It is evident that the three core qualities of a blockchain model also improve the quality of data collected, along with its origination. So to kind of sum up what we just talked about is on blockchain in clinical trials. Blockchain technology could positively impact clinical trial supply chain by improving the traceability of medications from active pharmaceutical ingredients to patient in real time. It has a built-in trust system due to crypto key and developed consensus systems. This facilitates the gathering of patient-level data in a HIPAA-compliant manner. This is done by having patients and other individuals participating in the network record data to the blockchain, which can move the information to appropriate systems and groups in access to review the data. The data is auditable, trackable, immutable, and can help create a longitudinal records of a patient health status. The validating nature of this technology will no doubt benefit the patient, sponsor, and all stakeholders, eliminating frictions and hopefully cost and time. So this is an illustration quickly. I'm sorry I'm short on time. Apologize for that. So this is a centralized, traditional clinical trial database flow. Sit in the center, a coordinating center. On the bottom, the information flowing from the PI, from the subjects, and then you distribute in almost parallel fashion, but not always in terms in sync. So, and then decentralized database structure that can be communicated in real time in a robust manner is that everyone is connected in a way that information can be shared and distributed in real time, However, the stakeholders that at each juncture that are relevant to that should be exposed to information will be allowed to do it, and this can be coded through a smart contract for permission. So with great promise, blockchain technology has many advantages in security, data protection, and ability to bridge the disparate systems that manufacturers, CROs, and study sites utilize. This technology has the benefit of immediate information access without having all the data located in one place, thus making it less vulnerable to external and internal attacks. A combination of process serialization and blockchain technology holds the key to ensuring clinical trials integrity to overcome multiple challenges. It provides an assurance that missing in the industry today by leveraging technology and knowledge of tomorrow. So Warren Buffett famously said that when hiring someone, you're looking for three things, generally in the person: intelligence, energy, and integrity. And if they don't have the last one, integrity, don't even bother with the first two. So I like to take that same principle and apply it to building a database. When constructing a database, you're looking for three things. Generally, in a database, you're looking for immutability, robustness, and integrity. And if they don't have the last one, which is the integrity, don't even bother with the first two. And that will be my concluding remark. And I'd like to thank you for listening in. And if you have any questions, I think that I have gone over time. Please don't hesitate to contact me by email. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day and stay safe.